Okay, here we are on April 6th, 2002. I'm Neil Oseman. I'm going to be directing Soul Searcher, and my colleague James Clarke is behind the camera, and we're here drinking Coke and eating yoghurt and looking at some sketches and getting ready to start the first draft of the Soul Searcher script. Throughout the course of this documentary, you're going to see my hair change length quite radically, I should imagine.
I may grow a beard at some points, but we'll see about that.
Yeah, it happens from time to time. The original 15-minute Soul Searcher was really just a way to fill in the time between jobs. I was a freelance DOP and editor, and it was something creative to do with all this equipment I'd invested in. So I made that in 2000, and then the following year I made The Beacon, my first feature film.
I first heard about Soul Searcher during the filming of The Beacon. I'd spoken to Neil about his previous work, and this small, short 15-minute piece that he'd made a few years before came to conversation.
That's a wrap.
Towards the end of The Beacon, there was a suggestion that he may have been working on a script to actually develop that into a feature.
You can face the challenge.
I was very involved in short filmmaking and media activity in Herefordshire between very early 1997 and really right through till 2003.
Could there be a bit of business here where Joe just kind of fumbles with something and maybe just picks up a...
I was certainly interested in it as an idea and how it could be amplified and extended.
And it just all goes wrong and he drops. I mean, because that is all, you just need it once. Yeah. She just looks at him.
We aim to start shooting in October. We've set up a website which features a production journal and some sketches of characters, and that will really grow and develop as the movie progresses. We're currently looking for people to help fund the movie. We're aiming for a budget of £60,000. We're setting it all at night, we'll be lighting it all. We hope to get some rain bars to do a fight scene in the rain. We want to get a cherry picker to do some craning shots. There's some miniature effects at the end of the film.
We're hoping to shoot it all in Hereford, which is really only a small town, but we want to give the illusion of it being set in a bigger town, you know, a city.
It's probably more productive to go this way if that's all right.
No, wooden buildings are good though. That's what we want, yeah, right, Gothic.
First little scouting mission this evening, and it is just for the evening, so it's reasonably quick, but already it does yield different problems and different victories as well.
We're going to shoot here, hopefully, Joe's first confrontation as the Grim Reaper, in which he saves some clubber girls from a demon. It will start off here and then, as I have in my mind, my unbudget restricted mind, they then go around the front and start climbing out all over the balconies and kicking each other's asses. It's May 31st, 2002, and James and Simon Wyndham, the fight choreographer, and myself have got together this evening to have a chat about the fights in the film and also to shoot some kind of footage of Simon in a kind of hooded, long-coated, backlit scenario with a scythe, doing some kind of, well, spinny thing was the original idea, but we've been provided with this scythe by a friend of a friend, and it's somewhat larger and more cumbersome and advanced in its state of deterioration. And perhaps we might have imagined. So we'll be rethinking our strategy accordingly. And we will not be having a side anything like this in the film itself.
I'd been involved with Neil's previous film, The Beacon, and I think it was just a natural progression from the previous production that he brought me on board Soul Searcher.
And so unable to use the authentic scythe, we're now going to resort to a pole from under the stairs.
Will this flap about a bit? Maybe it needs to be double.
Let's do some moves, let's see what it looks like.
We're just filming for about an hour, or even that actually. It's an interesting experiment to see what we get in terms of whether people notice we're around and so on. And I have to say, well, nicely, no one seems to really care at all, which is great. Well, this is July the 3rd, 2002. So what we did last week was I went into our local art college because they were interested in getting some more students in for auditions, which is fine. And we've got a little bit of a range of people.
It's always difficult to
It's
tell.
very difficult. She could come in, she could have a beard. We just don't know.
She could have a beard.
We just don't know. So we've got casting on the go, conceptual art on the go. We've checked out some locations and Neil has some very firm ideas about that.
Oh,
We need
yes.
to refine those things, which is fair enough. We're still, oh my god, it's horrific actually.
We've still got
We've
no
still got
money.
no money. It's completely the worst and hardest thing to do every time. Making the film is easy. To get that money is absolutely the most difficult thing. I mean, we've gone around the houses this week with certain places trying to at least get an indication of how we might be able to get money from people, and it's just crazy. And it is
We're
becoming.
gonna take a busking.
It's horrible.
Such a.
You are the light of my life.
You have a scythe which is like a big curvy knife.
But will you ever go out with my wife? Soul
If you
searcher,
do, I will take your life.
you hop across the roofs. Soul searcher, demonic.
You cannot stop this! You will not stop this! Says who?
You've got to put me back.
Me being me, no other work going, decided to go along for one of the auditions. The audition itself was surprisingly easy, very comfortable.
So come August 2002, we had seen actors, we had some idea that maybe a couple of them might be of use, but it was quite a tenuous situation. And then I just suddenly thought, I don't know whether I need to be as involved as I thought I was originally going to be. I just didn't feel like it was going to be the best place for me to be at that point.
I guess I must have been worried about the fact that I now had to do it all myself, but in a perverse way, part of me was thinking, yeah, you know, it's me against the world again, screw James, yeah, I'm going to do it.
This sketches Joe once he's fully trained.
The thing that stuck in my mind the most was just the artwork was fantastic, and the whole concept of the film was a little striking, to say the least. That these guys had, you know, written this high concept movie, and they were going to shoot it for, well, next to nothing.
I know how to make stuff cheap.
I thought it was never going to happen, to be honest, but was hoping that it would.
Yeah, this is what we hoped would be the last day of auditions. We're supposed to be seeing 3 people for the role of Luca, 1 last person for the role of Gary. We're in a little room in Holborn, and no one's turned up yet. So this is what it's like trying to get actors on a low budget film when you got no money. You know, like Matt just said, they're doing us a favour, and if they decide they don't want to turn up, they don't turn up. I remember there was a meeting where I got all the crew together and sat them down and tried to work out what the minimum was the film could be made for. But even that minimum amount, we'd need to get some investment, and there was a lady that was writing off and trying to get sponsorship and investment from local businesses, and the letters were coming back saying no, and it was all starting to fall apart. There were a couple of major roles that still weren't cast, and the guy that was supposed to be making the props did a runner with the expenses money I gave him. It just got to the point where I had to say, look, I can't do this, not now anyway. For the moment, I can't do this.
Time to call it a day.
I got a phone call saying the project had been put on the back burner, and I thought, oh, bloody typical.
I was immensely disappointed, but I was not surprised.
There was the feeling at the time that nobody was really sure whether or not it was actually going to get off the ground again.
A month or two had gone by since sort of putting pause to Soul Searcher Phase 1, and I remember Neil and I sat down and watched the Back to the Future films, which we have both always loved. But all that happened was that I just was reminded of the spirit in which Soul Searcher had originally been conceived. We just thought, well, maybe we should try and reactivate Soul Searcher.
A lot's happened in the last year, although we still haven't shot a single frame of Soul Searcher.
Oh, hello there. I've been advised to contact the office of Corinne Hollingworth, and I wondered what the best thing to do is, whether I could either speak to an assistant or email. Well, we are our own production company, and we're new. We're very new.
How can it be this difficult?
Really, I do feel that my head's going to explode if we don't make this film pretty soon.
Neil and I were out for lunch, inevitably, and talking about the project, and Neil said, look, this is what I want to do. I want to make this as a super low budget piece of work. He was pretty confident he could do it. Ultimately, he knew what that would require.
I'd been working a lot that summer. I'd got some money in the bank, and I felt we can go ahead and we can make this on a micro budget. Some friends and family had offered to invest, so I knew we could get enough in the bank to at least start shooting with, about $7,000.
When he said that, I just thought, I don't know whether this is going to be something I can deal with at this point, because I was in the midst of writing a book which had a crazy deadline to it and so on. But I just probably had a doubt there, and then thinking, God, am I really going to be able to factor that into the other things I'm doing at that point, and so on.
It was written all over James's face that he was not happy with the idea. But I was in denial about it. I needed the support of another person to get through another feature film project, and so I took his words that he was happy to do it at face value.
I was walking down the street just coming home from work, and the phone rang and it said Neil Oseman on it. I was like, bloody hell, what have I done, what's going on? And I answered it, and he said, oh, we're starting shooting in November. You still interested? And I was like, yeah.
So we put out a casting call on shooting people, did a couple of days of auditioning in London, and cast all the principal characters that hadn't already been cast the previous year.
I can count them all on one hand.
I just went onto the website, basically, because it was kind of worth a look. It was intriguing. I think I applied for the part, or I sent off for the part, and I got a call for the audition. But I've been reading the journal. Like, I went right back to the beginning of the journal, and I think it was up to 18 months at that point, or a year. There was so much kind of enthusiasm and devotion behind it already.
Where do I sign?
From that point, it was real,
I sent your mum a Valentine's card once. Don't freak, Kate. I was only 8.
I didn't need to hear that, Gary. Ever.
That's what brings us all together, I always thought.
At that point, I'd just graduated from drama school, so I suppose it was my first professional job. At the time, I was working at the National Archives, photocopying documents for 8 hours a day, so the thought of being able to escape that and go to do this really exciting project, even for no money, it felt like it was the right thing to do.
I mean, why can't people just be more...
Well, you're not going to get all hippie chick on me, are you?
Would you like me to?
It can't be good, right?
No, this could be worse than business in Siberia.
Sometimes you just do things, or you want to do things, again, like in the casting process, you just think, I really want to do this character, or I really want to do this film. And when I did the rehearsals, that just kind of embellished the whole feeling even more.
It was about 4 o'clock and everyone was quite tired, and the costume designer turned up with, you know, the costumes in boxes and bags and so on and so forth.
What we can do is we can put a safety pin underneath. Back here.
When I saw the concept drawings, I imagined the coat being this kind of almost billowing thing. You know, it would blow in the wind, and it would, when I moved, it would move behind me and be quite dramatic. And I think it was a grey cashmere coat, painted blue. And after putting it on, the blue came off on my hand.
This kind of thing came out of a bag. Moths came out first, and then this thing came out. And it kind of scared me. It was something far more suited to a granny in bingo.
Did you say 32?
Was that right?
I need 34.
34? Good.
So there was this sense of having to be very polite unto the person who'd expended some time, money and energy on creating these costumes. And also that sense of like, we're going to have to really redo some of these things once this person goes.
They get to the bench, sit on the back and continue their talk. So
I first met Neil actually in New York working on another film that my cousin made called Beyond Recognition. He was the director of photography on that. He was telling me that he was working on a film and showed me the script, and I read it and kind of said in a way that you do when you're working on film sets, yeah, we should make that.
I hope to get work experience out of it, really, because I did a year at uni studying video, which wasn't really that interesting, to be honest. I just wanted more work experience.
I was pretty anxious. That's basically how I felt. I just generally felt worried about the scale of what we were doing.
It was great when Ed turned up in Hereford because he was just so on the case. I just didn't have to worry about anything anymore.
Just a TV they don't want me to know.
At the start of the shoot, we thought we would have it all covered, and what we were lacking we would have by the end of the shoot, but that never happened.
You will have to sever all contact with the mortal world. The moon will be your sun, and the sun your moon.
The very first thing that went wrong was we plugged in our 5,000 watt tungsten Fresnel that was going to be the lamp that was lighting all the wide shots, and it tripped the power supply and we just couldn't use it for the first day.
Watching Neil freak out, I do actually find quite funny.
And then there was the crane. I wanted a crane shot to open the movie.
Unfortunately, James had sent it back because he thought we weren't going to be using it. And that was another Neil's hitting the roof moment.
And then the third problem we had was that after shooting our first 3 or 4 takes of the movie, I looked at the tape on playback and it was blank. The camera was playing up. It was not a good way to start the movie, basically, not a good way at all.
It's not like it just balances out. There's something wrong with not sleeping. There's something wrong with being awake at night time, and I think your body's aware of it because you don't feel right.
Thanks. Speed and action.
As we got towards closing times, the more colourful characters of Hereford came to the fore.
It was mainly from the drunk people of Hereford coming past and asking us if we were making porno movies and if they could star in them.
So there are issues of things like, well, you know, where can people go to get through the fact that it's a freezing cold night? How are we going to feed these people? We had a generator that we accessed and hired, and you know, how do you get that from where it's being delivered to a mile and a half down the road where the location is, because we don't have a car that's got the right kind of tow bar for the generator. So that was my job, was really just to stay on top of those kind of practical issues. Now I'd had a background doing that within short films and other kinds of projects, so I was familiar with what the requirement was.
I really like James. He was a really friendly guy, actually. And he seemed to have everything under control and seemed to know exactly what he was doing.
The first evening I thought went fairly well, despite all the other problems with that particular shoot. After we managed to complete the fighting required for that sequence, I thought everything was going quite smoothly. You know, we got it done, and on screen I think it works quite well. It's nice and smooth, nice and flowing.
And action! I hated that first week so much. I'd had this film in my head for so long, and in your head it's always the perfect film, and then you start shooting it and it's compromise.
Neil, partly in jest, partly in seriousness, constantly said he was going to go home and couldn't be bothered doing it, which was quite a daunting idea because I didn't want to go back to Bristol with my tail tucked between my legs, having buggered up my first shoot.
I just wanted to pack it all in and get on a plane and leave the country and just get away from it.
I don't want it!
Can we try again a little less sinister?
A little less sinister?
Yeah.
And this is night 4 of 42 nights, I think it is. I think the whole thing's going fine. We've had some bumps, but that's part of the job, really, so you get on with that, that's fine. And I think everyone is happily beavering away and can see the benefit of our efforts. I haven't really spoken to Neil, the director, since we started work, which I guess is fine. We just rumble along doing our different things for the job at hand. And I think it's, I don't know, I think it's going to be good.
There's a bit too much of something on that Now at Last We Should Be Together again.
Okay.
I don't think it can be any more natural.
Yeah. It's just great to see it. I mean, I feel like it's all occurring in something like kind of a dream. And we're on the road with the hairy lurcher. Sort of searcher. I've got a car full of kit, heart full of hopes. Car full of crew. Car full of 4 people. We're packed.
Camera's running, action.
So what do you want me to do next?
Hi, Anthony.
Hi, I'm Brian. I'm Stan. I'm Carl. I'm Will. We are the companions of the Crow medieval reenactment group.
is a Sunday night and we're at Campion's.
Thank you.
About to do our first shot of the evening. Dante opening his portals. This camera, which was supposedly repaired a week ago by a company called Limited in Stoke-on-Trent, who f***ing suck! It's actually still knackered. Looking back, obviously it was the cold.
You're shivering.
I mean, there were moments when the equipment just had a layer of ice and frost over them because it was so cold.
5 or 6 seconds, once you've got there, 5 or 6 seconds kind of looking in, and then just a reaction to something's coming straight towards you.
As we were doing the scene, I had this thought in my head. There was a possibility that if he's reconstituted, clothing wouldn't really be reconstituted, so therefore he would be reconstituted in the nude. I had this terrible image in my head, me having to strip off, start bollock naked, and throw myself around on the ground.
No, God damn you!
Hey!
It's a bit low. And the bottom doesn't stay together.
I think it's just a screw it like that one.
Don't think so.
What the other way?
No.
We're now going to resort to a pole from under the stairs.
But what do you think overall? What about the blade?
She painted it a bit better, but it's not as bad as it could be. It's fine. It'll look okay.
Actually, I've got the
Yeah,
tape.
Yep.
This is semi-solid. AJ, have you split your pants? AJ.
Ah, you f***ing joking. Can we get some gaffer tape? The black gaffer tape, please. Preferably the black.
We are trying to paint Neil's front room to look like Joe's bedroom. And we're doing it in this lovely shade of blue. But we've got about 6 hours to do it before we start shooting. Before the crew get here. So time is of the essence, really. Vic, our location PA, is helping. About to see the room.
Yeah, it's a bit streaky, but it's blue.
Put them, you don't have to cover it just randomly wherever you put them.
I like, you know, the buzz of a film set where people are painting things and arranging things and sorting out lighting and things like that. It's just a wonderful atmosphere to be in.
Everybody had worked out what their job was and how they could get on with that.
I was really pleased with what we shot that night. It was finally starting to feel like we were getting somewhere.
Heather. We've had a very amusing, well no, not amusing at all actually, we were beaten by the weather and a bit of bad luck today. We were going to film at the cider distillery at Muchmarkle, but the rain was heavy earlier on, so we decided to call that quits. So we had lined up another location in Hereford, and we went to see it, and it was not quite the ticket, so we were basically left without any location that we could use. It was too late to really rectify the situation with the distillery. So we're in the Soul Searcher household. This is the house where we're housing the actors.
And the AD.
The assistant director this evening. And in all seriousness, what we're just going to have a chat and see how we can best use the next couple of days. We're not in big trouble. I mean, we've lost an evening's work, but that's not the end of the world by any stretch. So.
I was incredibly stressed actually as an AD. Me and Neil were both trying to keep the shoot going with very limited resources and very limited amounts of sleep. I felt I was clocking up my duties because the scheduling was just going out of the window.
It felt like the momentum was starting to break.
This situation has now officially gone from bad to worse.
We just had to get back on track. We couldn't drop any more scenes. So that led to 2 extremely long nights.
You're old and experienced, right? So share the knowledge. I really like this girl.
I was adamant that the scene should be one continuous Steadicam shot.
Roll sound. The only exceptional thing was, apart from the fact that it was absolutely freezing, we had to do an exceptionally long piece of dialogue. Camera speed, marketplace.
Scene 37, take 6.
Every time either I would make a mistake or Ray would, we would walk the street and we would walk back again, and then we'd do it again, and then we would come back and we would do it again.
Oh my god!
It just was not going to happen.
Scene 37, take 25.
And then we had to move on to Rick's place to shoot some stuff there, but I think there were only about 4 of us who managed to make it to Rick's house.
My chin was wobbling at this point because I'd worked from 6 in the afternoon till 7 in the morning for about 2 weeks, and I didn't want to do it again. At the end of the night, I don't think any of us felt like we'd actually achieved anything. We'd lost the scene we'd done 27 takes to try and get. It was determined, I think, at that point that we had to reschedule it. And I think the air guitar scene pretty much ended on a downer as well. It was like, well, we've done it, but we're probably going to have to reshoot it. Heather, would you like to...
The next night we started with what should have been a simple dialogue scene, but unfortunately it was, I think, the Saturday after November 5th.
Night.
And there was a fireworks party going on next door. And that was a complete...
Oh, please, no. Who you are.
And then we went back to Rotherwas again.
Obviously, concept art and reality are 2 completely different things. In reality, it did look a bit like a incredibly dangerous-looking tranny.
I just had to keep the demons like on the edge of frame or going through frame briefly or just really dark in shadow. We had to sort the demon look out.
And then we moved on to the graveyard about 6 in the morning.
Kat had to be woken up so she could get down to the graveyard, play the role.
It feels bizarre because, you know, you're in a B&B in a strange place and someone calls you up at 3 in the morning and says, okay, now we're going to go down to the graveyard and you're going to pretend to be at your mum's grave.
It just poured down with rain that night. I remember that all the lighting stands just getting covered with rain, and we weren't sure whether they're going to still work, but they did.
But it was all good, you know, that kind of weather really was nice for the scene. So everything's got its good points, I suppose.
And we had James, the producer, whinging about how he wanted to go home, but he couldn't go home because it was his car, which would have been taking all the equipment, so I actually had to keep him on set. As a producer, James just wasn't doing his job. He was saying things like, leave it to me, I'll get it sorted, and I did leave it to him, and it didn't get sorted. I was just, pardon my French, just getting pissed off with James, really. And I think quite a lot of people were. I found out that James was quitting the shoot. Well, I found out his intentions on the night of the graveyard shoot when we were having a huge argument about why he couldn't go home. And he basically said he was going to hand producer duties onto me as I was co-producing it basically by that point. Neil, well, basically I told Neil.
I didn't mind that James had left because Ed was totally on the case, and he was, you know, I knew I could rely on him to see the shoot through and to get us through it. But obviously I did feel again really let down by James.
My successor must now be found.
I was quite glad and quite proud to be promoted to producer from AD.
I thought Ed was Superman, to be honest.
My duties did increase and my amount of sleep did decrease slightly.
He threw himself in, feet first.
Very uplifting. I mean, he's got a good sense of humour, so it was nice to have somebody like that. When you're out in the cold at night.
We were doing a scene on the fire escape. In the process of queuing up the tape, I glimpsed a bit of the previous night's footage at Doodie's, and we'd had a really good night at Doodie's, and we'd shot a lot of material. It had been a long night, but we'd got some really good stuff. I was really pleased with it. The tape was not quite blank. There was a thin strip of picture down the right-hand side, and the rest was just grey. I very nearly burst into tears at that point. Fortunately, later that night we discovered that we'd only lost, it wasn't the whole of the previous night's work we lost, it was only the last couple of hours worth. So we were able to pick that up later on in the shoot.
One particular night I was crashing on the floor of his bedroom, and Neil just woke up in the middle of the night with the word, "Where's Colin?" I kind of woke up and went, "What? What are you talking about?" And Neil said, "Where's Colin? Where's the crew?" And as I was obviously still with it and not losing my grip on reality, I managed to say, "The crew is at home in bed." And as dedicated a man as he was actually directing the film in his sleep. Oh, we had difficulties getting makeup artists, sound recordists, everybody. Some of the days we didn't have official makeup artists at all, which is why we started training up some of our other crew members, like Ali, on how to do some of the other makeup.
When we shot the multi-storey car park scene originally, the demons still didn't look right.
Before I came onto the shoot, I'd read Neil's journal, so I was quite aware of the problems that had been going on before I'd joined. So also, it was my first feature film. It was a lot smaller than I thought it was going to be.
So are we going to try and go for there?
Yeah, I think it's this.
I was absolutely terrified at first. I had done things like that on my own, experimenting with different things at home, but I hadn't actually done that while I was working.
The final batch of props turned up. We quickly saw that most of them were going to have to be reworked by Ian.
Some of them I had to alter, like the guns, which needed repainting or bits added to them. Some things needed completely remaking, like plasma grenades. We needed holsters for the guns because there weren't, I don't think any were supplied from the original design of the weapons. Had like a few days, I think, to get that done. So I went to the supermarket and found some flash bottles, took them home, cut them up and then painted them, added various bits on. I found I was making the props during the day and then helped shoot the film during the night, so there's very little time for sleep. But
it was a very good time actually at Rowden Mill.
I think it was the best location we went to. To see this full-size train set at that chap's place, it was great.
We could have our lunches in a 1930s restaurant car, which was absolutely beautiful compared to, well, basically we've been having cold chips and sandwiches and cans of Coke from the back of people's cars for warmth, and to be able to sit inside this old upholstered train carriage and actually have hot water and hot food was fantastic.
So, time for 1, 2, both up.
That's nice. I don't feel good about this. I don't feel good about this. I really don't feel good about this. I just want to make it known. I don't feel good about this.
That one, the second one, bang, bang, and then make it a slight pause, and then you do the... So it's there, kind of slice it through like that.
plan today was to use Johnny's Mustang, which is a really nice sort of 5.8 litre Steve McQueen bullet-style car.
I just happened to say I happen to have an old 72 Ford Mustang that I didn't really use very much, but obviously was available to be used.
I was actually speaking to my agent and said, listen, I better go because I've got to drive the Mustang to the location. And he went, you what?
Lara is insured. She's insured to drive it all over the place in this train station, but she's not insured to drive it on the roads. Which means, thanks to a big major up, we cannot film with it tonight. Most probably not tomorrow. Maybe Saturday if we're lucky, and if not, Sunday. Which basically means the 3 days of shooting we're planning on doing here have been shafted.
And just tell us who's responsible for that.
That would be James Clarke. He's been telling me for the last 2 weeks he had it all sorted. But apparently he's been spending the last hour, which is good, trying to get it finalised. Because obviously overlooked the fact that you need to drive cars on roads. Because, you know, easy mistake to make, eh?
I remember Simon said tonight you've got to learn Wing Chun.
I've never done martial arts before.
Wing Chun's very kind of close anyway.
No, actually, we're hitting.
So we're hitting each other. Not intentionally, we're just hitting each other. We got to a point where we just didn't really care if we hit each other.
I'm going to need padding for this.
If you angle your body like that,
so straight,
you kick off in, so it doesn't actually impact you. And do you want me to, if we're kind of going to do there so we can't see it? That's it, drop of that one. Now swing over the top of that one. Then the kick.
Right. Okay, let's just do that. So.
How goes it, guys? Out in the cold?
It's not that cold, actually.
In the wet one?
No, it's not that wet either. It was worse yesterday, I think.
So you push me back, then I kick one, he ducks, bang, from the door, bang.
Right, yeah.
And then I can slide straight into position from last night. Oh, that's good, the machine is working now.
Okay, let's do that.
I said to Ray, look, just go for it, man, just hit me. And he did, and as his foot came up to strike me in the chest, for some reason I went down slightly, and he hit me in the throat, kicked me directly in the throat. Ray was almost in tears. Because of that, I won a bottle of champagne, courtesy of Ray.
I felt that the film was going to be a complete disaster because nothing seemed to be going right. We just seemed to be faced with constant problems.
People's morale was kind of slowly diminishing.
That weekend, instead of getting the rest that I probably really needed, I worked flat out to finish the trailer so I could show it to the cast and crew.
I remember it looked superb.
Wow.
I was very impressed.
It definitely buoyed your spirits.
Yeah, we watched the trailer.
Only once, you know. Only once every 10 minutes for about a week.
We filmed at the Chain Library in Hereford, which is an annex of Herefordshire Cathedral. Pretty much everything in this library is priceless. We were given permission to go in there and film.
There we were with some of the nation's most treasured possessions.
Neil wanted to use the smoke machine, so he did ask, are we allowed to use the smoke machine? So I said, I'll go and ask the curator now.
Remembering, of course, that this building is climate controlled.
Neil obviously has time was of the essence because we're only allowed to use it for a couple of hours. Just thought, I'll go for it anyway. So he started spraying around smoke, and I've never seen a grown man with a look of terror that fixed on his face as the curator walked in and saw this smoke around.
Abner, who attacked you?
I was convinced that any second the sprinklers on the ceiling were going to burst open and all these priceless books were going to be destroyed.
We had to evacuate the library, and the fire brigade was called, and the alarms were tripped, and the fire brigade was on their way, but luckily we managed to cancel them at the last minute.
As it turned out, they actually have an argon gas fire prevention system there. Had it gone off, the books would have been fine, but all the oxygen would have been sucked out of the room and we would all have died.
Every time we wanted to move the Mustang to and from set was on the back of this flatbed truck. James very generously agreed to pay for some of them by himself because he felt responsible for it. Because I think without James's contributions, most probably would have bankrupted the film.
The back end, where we both went, it started going, I was like, it's a heavy car.
Then I thought you were going to hit Neil. I was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, go get him, girl.
Action! Luca! This is crazy! The vans are gonna blow!
Yeah, I got a call from Ed one night saying that he was desperate to find a nightclub. He asked me if I'd contact the Crystal Rooms to see if they'd let us shoot there, because James had contacted them previously, but they said they might do it, they might not. So I just phoned them up. He only let us have 2 days to film there when we needed 3 full days, but he was adamant that no, we'd have set hours on 2 days and that would be it.
It was a nightclub, so we had to shoot there during the day, and of course the previous night we were filming all night.
The Crystal Room shoots were an absolute nightmare.
I think I'd had 2 hours sleep.
At most an hour.
I think I'd had maybe half an hour or something.
I had had 25 minutes sleep.
When you're scheduling it, you're like, oh yeah, people could do without sleep, sleep's overrated. But when you get there and you're supposed to be doing this action scene, and everyone's supposed to be motivated and you haven't had any sleep, it's just impossible.
It was just hell. It was a horrible day.
Please, end it quickly.
Do it. Okay, let's go for a take.
Becky, the makeup girl, came up with some really, really impressive ways of improving the makeup for particular demons.
I love, you know, getting in and making something that looks gruesome.
Stage diving. At that point, everyone needs to cheer. All right. Everyone is looking that way, and then go back to talking or whatever. In those 2 days at the Crystal Rooms, we only got about half the scene shot.
That's right.
The year is 1782.
It was a very good year.
We were so inspired by the work that we were doing. We were talking about our backstories of our characters, and so we ended up getting a Chinese takeaway and cracking open a bottle of wine and basically going through ideas for the prequel.
Oh yes, we did, didn't we?
Okay, we quickly established the brains of the operation, right?
Yeah, it's back.
Yeah.
It made a really big difference that we were all in a house together. When we weren't actually on the shoot, we were like having cups of tea around the kitchen table.
If we wanted our space, we had our space. You know, if we wanted each other, we were there for each other. It was a great. It was like a close-knit community.
AJ. Morning. Do you want a cup of tea?
Oh, go away.
I had a phone call from Neil asking me if I could choreograph the fight. Okay. Not that many hours' notice, and but managed to work something out in my head.
Back in the land of the living.
Richard Brake arrived. and I discovered that he'd never even touched a sword before. Okay, great. So I not only had to choreograph the fight, but I also had to show Richard how to use it proficiently enough to actually get the scene done. Richard picked up the sword very, very quickly, and he looks great. And I believe we wrapped that night earlier than any other night on the shoot.
We had some rain bars made. They didn't work very well, unfortunately. So we wound up just using the cider brewery's industrial pressure hose.
We needed someone to stand over it, you know, with a hand over the nozzle to spray water, basically. And for reasons I can't quite remember, I ended up doing it. It was just dribbling down my thumb and just dribbling down my arm. My arm was just numb.
Is this a typical night out for you?
We got 2 more moves. 2 more moves.
Great, I don't think it's going to last.
Great, warm down here.
Between takes, the actors had to keep bashing their sides back into shape because they just kept getting bent during the fighting.
The rain fight itself was quite a difficult one. I couldn't see where I was fighting because of the hood of the costume I was wearing. But I felt even more sorry for Johnny because he had to wear the wet clothes that I'd been fighting in to complete the scene.
When was it? 4 o'clock in the morning. By the time they actually needed to do my bit, Simon disrobed, and then, you know, you just have to put on the most soaking clothes ever.
It seemed that he had instant hypothermia. He was shaking. I thought he was going to be in need of serious medical attention. He was that bad.
But I think overall, from the atmosphere, you just knew that it was going to add quite another dimension to what we were doing.
That's right, it's Saturday, November 29th. It's the penultimate day of the shoot, in theory. We are 7.5 days behind schedule. We're finishing tomorrow until January. It's been a very frustrating 6 weeks. A lot of things have gone wrong. A lot of names have been cursed. You're all bastards. I hope you burn in hell. Limited, Stoke-on-Trent. Don't ever get your camera repaired there. Yeah, it's been like some kind of punishment at times. So tonight we should have been shooting a couple of scenes which we can't do because of props and bad organisation again. Now I'm going to just sit around and eat and drink too much and belch like that, I expect.
The day after the wrap party, we were due to shoot around a mill, but due to rain, we couldn't.
The rain was so heavy you couldn't actually physically see your hand if you put it into the rain.
And I think that last day typified the obstacles that we're up against for the entire shoot.
You should get some rest.
After the shoot finished, I felt relieved, basically. A chance to get back to normality, a chance to realign your sleep patterns to the everyday world.
It was good in the respect that I could actually go home and have some sleep.
Because we'd been together like almost 24 hours a day for months and months, it was strange to, you know, walk away from that.
Hi, it is December the... lost track of the days. It's December the 19th, 2003. It's about 20 to 8 in the evening and I'm on a very nocturnal life cycle at the moment. So I've only been up just over an hour. And I'm working on one of the trickiest ghost effect shots in the film. I've probably been working on the compositing for about 4 hours now and I'm not even a quarter of the way through it. It's a very time-consuming shot. Basically what I'm doing is cutting a hole in each frame of Joe's shot to reveal Heather underneath. It's January 2nd, 2004 and I'm just starting work on the Portal special effects for Soul Searcher using a wonderful black Soul Searcher t-shirt and some Tesco value toilet tissue. Now, basically all I'm doing is creating a very crude stop motion by crumpling up the paper, and I'm going to shoot about 50 frames of that crumpled in a slightly different way each frame to get a really jagged motion to it. I've stuck some sheets of OHP transparency onto my TV screen and I can just draw roughly around AJ so I know where the portal's got to be when I switch to the camera view. I posted on Shooting People for a composer saying that it was a micro-budget film but I wanted a real orchestral score, and I did get a few emails from people saying you don't know what you're doing, that's not possible, and one from a guy calling himself Mum's Curtains who said you've never f***ing done this before, have you? Why don't you just crawl back into the hole you f***ing crawled out of, you know? Unfortunately, there were some more positive responses.
What came across immediately was that, that there was like no fear. Neil had made a film which he wanted to make no matter what.
So as I was doing all this post-production stuff, I was expecting that Ed was busily scheduling up the pickup shoots for January, and when it started to get to like mid-January and the actors were emailing me going, so when are we shooting? And I was like, well, I don't, you know, what Ed should have been dealing with that.
I was trying to find a job and unfortunately I couldn't give all the time that I wanted, or that Neil needed really. And I basically became a worse and worse producer as time went on, as I spent more and more time focusing on myself rather than the film.
It got to the point where I had to say, look, mate, unfortunately, you're hindering more than you're helping.
Which I felt was fair enough, really.
Neil just kept going, even though he had to do everything on his own.
Which I wasn't happy about, but there was no other way to do it.
That was truly a one-man show by the end of it.
I feel odd now that we're back here doing it again. My mind just needs a bit of time to get used to it all. The last few weeks have been weird, you know, I've not been enjoying them much. Just getting everyone back together to do these few extra days of shooting has been really, really difficult. Because one location in particular has been a right royal pain in the arse.
That's the crystal rooms, by the way, folks.
So, yeah, it's good that it's only 2 or 3 days at a time. So, by this point in the pickups, the money was long gone.
How come I've never got any money?
The reason I invested in the project was because the thought of it not finishing, not getting finished was almost unbearable because I could see what a good film it was.
I decided to invest in Soul Searcher because I believe in the project. I did believe in it then, and I still believe in it now. Otherwise I wouldn't just chuck my money away. Simple as that.
After much cajoling, the Crystal Rooms agreed to let us back in to film for, I think, something like 3 or 4 hours. That wasn't enough to finish the scene, so we had to shoot the rest of the stuff with the principal actors at another nightclub, Manhattan's.
I did wonder. I thought, very different looking club here.
I was running out of time to get the demon armour made. We'd had 2 attempts at it during the main shoot and neither had really been any good.
Basically, after the brief chat that Neil and I had, he said that he was after some armour, said that he'd send me some concept sketches, and when the concept sketches actually came through, I was very taken by them. I called Neil back and said, yeah, I'm okay to do that, and then he dropped the bombshell. He said, can I have 5 in 2 weeks?
We also needed to get the demon makeup sorted for the final battle.
With Dean, I wanted it to be, he could have been a person who had maybe been trapped in this other world and he'd been tortured.
So Jonathan had made the armour and it looked fantastic. We'd got the makeup sorted, that was looking fantastic. I had to sell my little camera to pay for the last weekend of filming. I was living off like rice and half a bag of party sausage rolls that I'd found in the bottom of my freezer. Everything was set for this final climactic battle and we shot half of it, and then the martial artists playing the demons decided they weren't going to work the final night.
Not impressed, really. It was at the stage of the shoot, I think a lot of people wanted to kill each other. To cut a long story short, we had to cut the sequence short.
We kind of had to fill it in with Ray and I having another fight.
You're going to take the top of my head off if you get any closer.
I think it worked out better. It's fated, you know, things have happened for a reason.
Because we're going to change. He's going to change hands because then he does that, and then I go down and you grab seven.
You come in, the door closed shut, poltergeist, blah 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 blah, they're all sort of bang 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 bang. Speed and action.
I'm now officially fully wrapped on sausage.
Well and truly.
Well and truly.
How do you feel, Ray?
Yeah, all right. Happy.
After the shoot had finished, it was really weird because it was like going through a period of cold turkey. And I got my little hit every night, as did most of cast members, I think, by checking the journal every day online. It was a really good way to just see what was going on, how the edit was going, how Neil was doing the sound effects, blah, 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 all this kind of thing.
I really like the old style traditional effects using real practical elements.
Whoever's behind this is obviously using primitive methods.
We tried various ways of doing the umbilical cords, but in the end I realised that it was going to have to be CGI just to get the level of control that we needed. Meanwhile, I had a huge editing problem. A week after the pickups wrap, we'd shot in a third nightclub to get the angles of the band for the nightclub sequence, and the 3 clubs just weren't cutting together convincingly. And so I decided it had to be reshot, and so I started calling around the actors.
Did I miss the band?
You're having a laugh.
I remember the day I got the call to go back, and I had literally just had all my hair cut off to do a war film.
I was on the phone constantly for 3 days trying to find anyone who could, you know, get us a wig.
I was still broke. I really didn't want to have to reshoot just because of the expense or because of the stress. Well, I've got this test screening coming up. I was going to screen the rough cut at Hereford Art College to some students to see what they thought of it, and I decided I'd wait till after that and see what they made of the nightclub sequence.
Neil obviously told them at the beginning that, you know, there's a few things that they might find a bit incongruous in there as regards Lego.
had varied response to the test screening, mostly positive. But the best thing was no one said, hey, that nightclub scene looks stupid, it's set in 3 nightclubs. I was quite relieved that we didn't have to reshoot that. All we had to do was one short night of pickups in June.
The thing I was most looking forward to was actually the death scene. Having to throw myself backwards off a top board in the swimming pool and hopefully not drown.
I made AJ sign a disclaimer saying that if he died, his family couldn't sue me, basically.
I'm alive! I've been looking at you! Shooting! Shooting!
It's kind of a special thing to know that you've been with it from the beginning, right from the beginning, almost. It's a nice warm feeling that you have when you finally hear, okay, you're wrapped, knowing that you're the last one.
Now the edit was locked, I could get to work in earnest on recording and track laying the sound effects, and also Scott could get to work on the music.
To try and write music for action adventure, that's fine, but it's the romance, the sort of human moments in it. That, for me, was the key part. So I developed their love theme, which comes back in various guises throughout the score. All the score's pretty much based on that one theme.
It brought a tear to my eye. It really did when I heard the music for the first time, just the synthesised version. It was amazing.
Just saw the advert looking for crew to help out with the film. I thought, wow, this, just finished my degree, I'm looking for some experience, and hell of an opportunity, I thought, so yeah. Obviously the first thing would be making the puppet itself. After machining the skeleton, you've got to pad it out. I really looked towards Ray Harryhausen for the inspiration for this, from the skeletons that he made from Jason and the Argonauts and other films like that. I'd be leaping about the room actually to trying to get an idea of how the creatures would move, and then you effectively transfer the movement from the live action reference footage onto the character when you're animating it, but step by step. It was a 6-month stint on the job. I don't think I ever regretted it at all, really. The only concern at the time was that, obviously, the budget constraints. Later on, the times, you started to feel the pinch. The fact that Neil was up in Hereford and I was down in Cornwall at the time, I was concerned originally, but it turned out to be pretty good. I think we rarely spoke, actually. But we didn't really need to, because he knew what he wanted.
There was also a second stop-motion animator, Andy Biddle, who was working on a couple of shots of Ezekiel sprouting wings and flying off. The umbilical cords were still a problem.
Neil contacted me and I believe at least 2 others and sent some test footage, and based on tests that I completed on that and sent back, I was awarded the job. There was an awful lot of shots to be completed. It was daunting at first, but then I knew that the 6-week schedule that was originally planned was not really realistic, and I knew it was going to take a lot longer than 6 weeks. I wanted every little camera shake to be reflected in the umbilical cord, so they all looked like it was shot at the same time.
Now that was a tough one.
Yeah, it was just that sheer work. It was just sit down hour after hour, day after day, sheer work on each shot.
There wasn't anyone responding to the advert to make the train. This left Neil in an awkward position, and because I'd essentially said, well, if you're in a bit of a position, then by all means I'll help you out. I made the train using a carpet roll inner, hardboard, which made the bulk of the body work. I cast the boilerplate and the chimney in resin. Then there's the wheels. As if it wasn't bad enough trying to find wheels that were the right size or something that was close. When I finally found something that would do the job, there was only one of them. So I actually only had one choice, and that was to cast them in resin, which isn't an ideal material to use, but it's all I had and all I was familiar with.
Shooting the train was going to be expensive, not because the model was going to cost very much, but because the explosions, the cost of the pyrotechnics, and also the explosions had to be shot on film so they could get that really overcranked slow motion look. As usual, we were filming the model train at night in the pyrotechnician's garden.
We were supposed to shoot from the morning on Thursday. We were supposed to get there ready to set up and then go through to the Friday lunchtime, I think.
They've all got tracing paper on.
Holly Swain, another model maker, had made model buildings and landscapes to be in the background of the shots.
Okay.
And we had to build a 25-metre embankment for the train to run along.
The plan was that we would shoot all the moving shots of the train that night, and then we would come back the following week and blow up the train and also the miniature vats for another sequence in the movie. As we were building the embankment, I got the phone call from John saying the train wasn't coming. Okay, one other option might be to go ahead with the VATS explosion on the 16th and perhaps to have some mock-up version of the train made just for the explosion.
I had actually underestimated the amount of work that went into it. Panic stations had been completely overridden. I was at a point of mental breakdown. My sleeping pattern had gone out the window. My personal health was being jeopardised. I was in a right state, to be quite honest. It's like the motion is quite bizarre.
So he gave it a week then for the chap to finish building the train, and then he brought it along on the following Thursday, I think. But when he actually brought it to set, it still wasn't completed.
The train was derailing. It's because there's a fair amount of wobble on the wheels, but although it was okay at home, apparently, here on uneven ground, it wasn't working out.
Evening, we got it all ready so we could film the VATS explosion whilst we had the film camera and the guys from London who were staying overnight locally. So we could get that explosion done at night and then finish the train through the night, get all the shots of that done and then film the explosion in the morning. The explosion of the VATS went fine.
So how has today's train work gone?
Abysmally! Apparently in full Soul Searcher style. So many people were stood around waiting for me, and there was nothing for me to give them.
I can't do this.
we just couldn't get it to run on the tracks, and it just wouldn't work. And I think the power tripped out at one point, and then it started to rain, and it wasn't really going our way that night. And I think it was in the early hours that Neil decided just to do a mock-up of the train, shoot the explosion, and then worry about filming the actual train moving later on, a couple of weeks down the line, so at least we had something to show for the night's work.
That has to be one of the darkest moments of my entire life.
So then, of course, we had to unmake the embankment. We had to put all the earth back, digging up this earth in the pouring rain and the mud and the cold at 3 o'clock in the morning, and words can't describe how depressing that was.
I suppose it's quite trying when you're doing stuff like that, but then I don't know, what can you do? What can you do? You know.
Hello, it's October the 2nd, 2004. It's coming up on a year since we started filming Soul Searcher, and I find myself here on a Saturday afternoon making tiny little models of some of the principal cast. I love making films, and I've been through hell making this one, but this is quite good fun. The train itself is currently at my uncle and granddad's workshop in Malvern, having whole new wheels fitted to it, so hopefully that'll come back working. And here's a little gun, a little rifle, and it's shit. They're all shit, but it doesn't matter because they're only going to be on the screen very, very briefly.
Yeah, this is going on. Well done. This is like the most like fun. Alright.
It works, I tell you!
Colin, your troubles are over. Someone will funnel.
I helped out purely because I was in Malvern, and it was interesting. It was fun, trying to keep this damn thing on the tracks.
6:30 a.m.
Action!
Colin, you're the man. He's a lot better at this view, isn't he?
I think we will have the thing flashing across the light as well. See, she was hanging from her left. And action.
On the run-up to the Banshee shoot, I'd lost all of the fears that I'd gained from the original train shoot, because I knew that the puppet was going to blow his mind. I'd roped in the help of a friend of mine, John Moore, who had the delightful job of being at my back for almost the entire day.
I kept coming back to the film, I think just because I enjoyed it and I wanted to see it through. I'd worked on the film for so long that I just thought it would be a shame to pack it in now.
Liberame Domine Morte Bella Sempre Mo Liberame Domine Sanctus Sempra Sanctis Bella Sempre Nobile.
Getting the choir was pretty easy because I knew a couple of people that were in Colla Voce. As for the orchestra, I just googled amateur orchestra, Herefordshire, Worcestershire, and started to ring round, and the second place I called, the Worcestershire Symphony Orchestra, were really enthusiastic.
Go with 3 and 1, band your order there. 3 and 1.
One day with the orchestra, which we had to get all the music done. You know, there's no question of not doing it. You've got to get all the music done. There's no point in coming away with most of the cues recorded. One of my concerns was that I didn't know the orchestra. I didn't know how good they were. It could have been a disaster. The other concern was recording. Turning up to an environment which you have no control over, a school hall. We could have had a major road nearby. There could have been a football match going off.
If there's just one part, excuse me, if there's just one part, then just one. Just one, okay.
When we took all the equipment down to record, it was fine. The orchestra played very well. The problem was time. Always time when you're recording.
It still gives me a tingle down my spine listening to the music. Just being there and hearing 56 people performing the wonderful score to my film was an incredible, incredible experience.
Wow.
I think it's going really well. I think it's really, really well. Really, really getting a really big sound from it. Really, really pleased with it. It's still a lot to do. And we're going to see how it goes, really. There's a lot more tracks to do. So it should be fun.
I was only going to be involved initially for, I think, an afternoon doing some ADR, and then after that I think I agreed to do the whole mix for the film.
You can't just leave him.
Well, Neil had done an immense amount of work on the film before I got involved, and unbelievably he'd managed to put together 50 tracks of sound, which is just obscene for something of such a micro budget. I remember sitting down with Neil 3 weeks before the first screening and thinking, how in the hell are we actually going to get all these mix elements together and get it sounding as it should do, get it sounding like a Hollywood movie, and being very scared about that fact. We talked about this for 2 hours initially, saying if we're going to cancel the preview, we should cancel it now and not do it the night before. But in the end, we decided that I would work during the day and Neil would work during the night, and therefore we would be at a double eye time.
Something is still missing.
The final effects, the smoke and the ghoulish faces in the smoke from the train, which was supposed to be cell animation, the guy that was doing it kept missing his deadlines, and it got to 2 weeks before the premiere, and I got a CD from him in the post, and there was 1 shot on it, and it was very dodgy.
The train smoke was landed on me very late in the production. I had like a week to work out how I was going to do it, finalise the pipeline, get the look right, get all the shots solved and done, get them burnt to CD and get them sent off.
When you're that tired, not only is your brain half asleep, but I don't know about other people, but certainly my ears start to compress, i.e. they get smaller, and you don't actually hear the sounds properly, and it actually starts to become very difficult to judge, you know, a scream from a bit of dialogue.
I remember being sat at the keyboard of Neil's computer, and it's literally, of the last 44 hours, I had only spent 3 asleep. I was glad that it was over, but I didn't know what to do with myself.
I was very happy with the finished product.
Oh, my head was just blown back. I can't really describe it.
Blown away?
I was blown away by the film actually when I eventually saw it.
It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Far more professional than I ever thought it would be.
I was really proud to be part of it.
Definitely time well spent.
All of those ideas that Neil and I talked about 3 years ago are so closely represented in the finished product.
I can't really pick fault with anything in the film, apart from the Banshee.
The cafe scene earlier was a little bit on the long side.
Some of the acting isn't up to scratch, and so perhaps the script isn't up to scratch at times, but I mean, it had all the energy and all the enthusiasm and, more importantly, all the entertainment value that we hoped it would way back when we first read it.
Now I'm going to just sit around and eat and drink too much and belch like that, I expect.
What is the most important thing you learned during the Beacon?
The most important thing I learnt from the Beacon was not to try and do everything myself. And the most important thing I learnt from Soul Searcher was to do everything myself.
I'm never going to work with Neil again.
The first thing he learned from the Beacon was not to do everything himself because he couldn't do everything himself.
And what did he learn from Soul Searcher?
Soul Searcher is never ever film at night in the winter when it's cold. And you got a bunch of actors who are stood around wearing freezing their bollocks off, moaning every 5 minutes, and a bunch of crew sitting around going, well, we have moaned quite a bit, haven't we?
What I have learnt from Soul Searcher is the importance of pre-production, mainly which I should have been involved in, instead of turning up 2 days before filming began, because otherwise people are going to fudge things up. Yeah, everyone would like to curse.
He's a bit
So thanks for being a pod.
Complete Muppets. He
deserves a slapping.
You are a knob. Who makes props that fall to pieces, don't work or look absolute cag. I mean, he made a scanner out of a blender. He made swords where the blades fell off.
Thank you all very much from the very bottom of my heart for all coming along and helping us do this, and for not letting any of those ups put you off or yeah.
We had a rap party. We got really drunk, went out onto the golf course. It was a triumphant end. to what had been a challenging yet enjoyable shoot.